Hello and welcome to the program UFO Warning. In this episode, we're talking about UFOs over Louisiana. That's correct, UFOs over Louisiana. Found these over at Nuforc. I really appreciate Nuforc. They post these really cool sightings up there. You hear about MUFON a lot, but Nuforc, to me, they're at ground level doing the real work as far as I'm concerned. This says that it happened on August 5th, 2025, 7:30 p.m. local time. It was reported the next day at 7:19 p.m., so they didn't waste any time getting this report in. Duration, approximately 1 minute and 30 seconds. Number of observers, military, one observer. Location, Houma, Louisiana. Details, photograph taken on October 5th, 2025 at approximately 7:30 p.m. So they got a picture of this thing. They said it's shaped like a disc. The color is amber. They estimate the size at about as big as, or maybe a little bigger than a helicopter landing pad. So I suppose they're on that oil rig. They've got an idea how big that landing pad for the chopper is there, and they're saying, well, it's as big as this. It was viewed from the oil rig. Direction from viewer west, angle of elevation 6 degrees, heading north. Closest distance approximately 500 yards. Estimated speed faster than anything the witness had ever seen. A strange object was photographed from an oil rig in the Gulf. It remained stationary for a short time before accelerating north at an unusually high rate of speed. The photograph was taken on October 5th, 2025 at approximately 7:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time from an oil rig located about 140 miles south of Houma, Louisiana. Now it's spelled Houma, Louisiana. They're 140 miles out in the water in the Gulf of America. The photographer was facing west while the object traveled from south to north. The photographer first noticed the object in his peripheral vision. He looked directly at it and observed it hovering silently. As he reached for his cell phone to take a photograph, the object began moving slowly. Just as he raised the phone to capture the image, the object accelerated away at an extraordinarily high speed. The photographer estimated that the object was at least as large as or larger than the helicopter landing pad on the oil rig and was approximately 500 yards away. There was an investigative report, and it says here they did this phone interview on October 11th, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. On October 11th, 2025 at 8:30 a.m., I contacted Kay by telephone and interviewed him regarding his son's UAP sighting. Kay's son works on an oil rig and was unable to file a report or participate in an interview, so Kay submitted the report to Nuforc and briefly discussed his son's sighting with me. Kay stated that his son requested that neither his name or the name of the oil rig be included in this report for security reasons. Kay explained that his son is a former member of the military and now works on an oil rig. Because of his work schedule, he was unavailable for a telephone interview. Kay agreed to forward my written questions to his son by email and then send his son's response back to me. The following statements are his son's responses. The craft was hovering over the water approximately 500 yards or 1,500 feet from me and was completely silent. It was approximately the same size as the helicopter landing pad on the oil rig, which measures 57 feet by 57 feet. The craft was amber in color and its entire surface appeared smooth. I could not see anything resembling a cockpit or engines, and there were no visible lights inside or outside the craft. I reached for my phone to take a picture of the craft, and as soon as I did, it began moving slowly toward the north. I managed to take the photograph included with the original report just before the craft accelerated away, faster than anything I've ever seen. I heard no sound when it departed, nor did I observe or feel any air disturbance. Conclusion. I found no corresponding aircraft activity on Flight Radar 24 at this time. There have been no additional reports from anyone else working on the oil rig. I advise Kay to contact me if there are any future sightings or if additional information becomes available. Kay and I also noted several interesting features visible on the object when the photograph was enlarged. Based on the available information, I'm classifying this case as an anomalous sighting. That's Keith Bickford, Nuforc investigator. Yeah, that is really cool. I'm over here at the website, and there's a picture here. I'll tell you, man, it's pretty wild. You can see it looks like maybe the railing of the oil rig that he's on. I can see the fires burning on the horizon from other oil rigs around. That makes sense. And then there's this, I would call this almost a translucent color, and they describe it somewhat as a saucer. But I gotta tell you, man, this thing is strange. It's almost like it's hologram. I'm going to post this on my Twitter feed, and you can take a look at this picture over there. This to me is just amazing. Very, very cool sighting. I want to look at another case here from Houma, Louisiana. That's the same area. Of course, this is onshore, as the last one we looked at was actually 140 miles out into the ocean. This is Nuforc case 189386. It says the teardrop UFO over Houma, Louisiana. On the morning of May 5th, 2025 at approximately 8:30 a.m. local time, 3 witnesses, including an experienced aviation professional, reported an unusual area object over Houma, Louisiana. The sighting lasted between 40 and 60 seconds, but what the witnesses observed was unlike anything they had encountered during years of working in aviation. The primary witness and a coworker were serving as ground traffic controllers at a local heliport when one of them suddenly pointed toward the sky and asked, "What is that?" At first glance, the witness assumed the object was nothing more than a cluster of balloons drifting through the air. But that explanation quickly fell apart. Instead of continuing on a predictable path, the object began moving erratically. What caught the witness's attention next were several bright red lights blinking beneath the craft. Realizing something was unusual, the witness grabbed a pair of binoculars. What came into focus was anything but a balloon. The object was described as a sharply contoured teardrop-shaped craft with clean, angular edges. It appeared to be approximately the same size as, or slightly larger than, an AW-139 helicopter, one of the most common medium-lift helicopters used in offshore oil operations and search and rescue missions. The craft hovered silently at an estimated altitude of 800 to 900 feet. Its upper surface appeared to be a faded coral color, while the underside was a much darker navy blue. The witness noted visible panel lines across the exterior, suggesting a structured, manufactured object rather than something inflatable. Extending from the rear was what appeared to be a tail section. Beneath that tail was a flat surface supporting 2 or 3 large, bright red lights arranged vertically along the centerline of the craft. Despite the witness's extensive aviation background, there were several features noticeably absent. There were no wings. There were no propellers or rotors. There were no visible engines. And there were no windows. The witness stated that he has 12 years of experience working around helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, and emphasized that this object did not resemble any aircraft he had ever encountered. After hovering for several moments, the object appeared to stabilize itself before accelerating rapidly. It departed the area on a straight course toward the southwest, traveling at an estimated speed of 190 to 250 miles per hour. The closest estimated distance between the witness and the object was approximately 1/2 mile. Adding another layer of intrigue, nearby air traffic control personnel were reportedly aware of the object. According to the witness, the local controller initially referred to it as a UFO, but declined to provide further details, saying only that it appeared to him to be a gaggle of balloons. That explanation, however, conflicted sharply with what the witness observed through binoculars: a hovering teardrop-shaped craft with defined panel lines, vivid red lights, no visible means of propulsion, and controlled acceleration is difficult to reconcile with a cluster of balloons. Whether this object represented an unconventional aircraft, an optical misidentification, or something entirely unknown remains unanswered. For 3 experienced aviation observers in Houma, Louisiana, the object remains one of the most unusual things they have ever witnessed in the sky. I guess so. Another amazing report there from down in Louisiana. This next report goes clear back to 1974, oldie but a goodie. It's Nuforc case 198375, titled "The 9-Foot Figure in the Louisiana Swamp." Some UFO reports describe lights in the sky, others describe structured craft, but every so often a report emerges that belongs to an entirely different category, one involving an alleged encounter with humanoid activity. This is one of those cases. According to a report submitted to the National UFO Reporting Center in June 2026, the witness waited more than 52 years before publicly documenting what he says occurred on the night of August 3rd, 1974. The witness identifies himself as an active duty member of the United States Air Force at the time of the incident, and he was not alone. According to the report, 8 active duty Air Force personnel were traveling in a 2-vehicle convoy after completing a temporary duty assignment at England Air Force Base in Alexandria, Louisiana. Their route followed the elevated highways between Alexandria and Baton Rouge near Krotz Springs and the northern edge of Atchafalaya Basin. It was approximately 11:30 p.m. The night was unusually bright. The witness describes clear skies and a full moon that illuminated the surrounding marshland so well that visibility extended for long distances across the levees and swamps. As the convoy continued south, the occupants of the lead vehicle noticed something emerging from the tree line nearly 1 mile away. At first, it appeared to be a large figure slowly making its way through the swamp. As the vehicles approached, the object came into sharper view. The witnesses estimated the figure stood approximately 9 feet tall. Its proportions immediately struck them as abnormal. According to the report, it possessed an enormous barrel-shaped torso, so large that one witness compared it to a cow walking on 2 legs. In contrast, its arms and legs appeared unusually thin compared to the massive body they supported. The entire figure was covered with what appeared to be a brilliant white suit. The witnesses said the suit resembled a pressure suit or space suit, but it looked far more streamlined than any NASA suit known to exist in 1974. Mounted on the figure's back was what appeared to be a large equipment pack. A thick white hose extended from that pack into the back of the helmet, giving the appearance of a fully enclosed life support system. Perhaps even more unusual was the environment through which the figure was moving. According to the witness, it walked effortlessly through the deep Louisiana swamp, crossing mud, standing water, and heavy vegetation without slowing or struggling. It then climbed the steep embankment of the highway levee and stepped directly onto the roadway. Despite emerging from the muddy marshland, the witness insisted the white suit remained perfectly clean. There was no visible mud, no water stains, no debris. By this point, the convoy had closed the distance dramatically. The witness estimated the closest approach to be approximately 15 feet. Inside the lead vehicle, the driver reportedly asked whether they should stop. The response from the passengers was immediate and unanimous: no. According to the report, fear overtook everyone in the vehicle. Rather than stopping, the driver sharply swerved around the figure to avoid striking it. The second vehicle accelerated to stay close behind and follow the exact same evasive path. What happened next may have been the most unsettling part of the encounter. The figure never reacted. It did not turn its head. It did not hesitate. It did not acknowledge the headlights, the engines, or two speeding automobiles passing only a few feet away. Instead, it continued walking at an estimated 3 to 4 miles per hour, maintaining the same pace and direction as though nothing else existed. After passing the figure, the occupants of both vehicles continued watching through their rearview mirrors. They reported seeing it finish crossing the highway before descending the opposite side of the levee and disappearing back into the swamp, where it eventually vanished into the darkness. The convoy did not stop. Instead, the airmen continued driving for more than an hour before finally pulling into a gas station in Baton Rouge. Only then, according to the witness, did everyone begin openly discussing what they had seen. The report states that all 8 servicemen were visibly shaken and struggled to explain the encounter. According to the witness, they quickly reached the same conclusion. No one would believe them. The witness attributes their silence to the atmosphere within the military during the years following the closure of Project Blue Book, when many service members believed that reporting unusual aerial or humanoid encounters would lead to ridicule, psychiatric evaluation, or damage to a security clearance. Whether those fears were justified or not, the group reportedly agreed never to report the incident. For more than 5 decades, the encounter remained known only to those 8 witnesses. Only in 2026 did one of them decide to place the account into the public record through Nuforc. As with many historical UFO reports, there is no physical evidence accompanying the claim. There are no photographs, radar records, or official military documents that independently verify the encounter. Instead, the case rests entirely on eyewitness testimony provided many years after the event. Still, the report stands out for several reasons. The number of witnesses, their military background, the detailed description of the alleged entity, and the remarkable consistency of the narrative. Whether the witness encountered an unidentified person, misidentified or unusual object under exceptional lighting conditions, or experienced something that remains unexplained, is impossible to determine to this day. But if the account is accurate, 8 Air Force personnel shared an encounter on a moonlit Louisiana highway that stayed with them for the next half-century, and only now has become part of the historical UFO record. Another very cool sighting. The way this thing's just moving across the road, not paying attention, reminds me of some of the Bigfoot stories, reminds me of some of the cryptid stories, but it also makes me think maybe they don't realize that they've crossed over into our dimension. And you wonder sometimes if they even see us. It's just like they're going along doing their own thing. I guess the easiest explanation I have, it's as if our two realities have just got so close together that we can see them, but they can't see us. And maybe sometimes it's the other way around, where they can see us and we can't see them. And they're thinking, hey, what's this guy doing here? You know, that's kind of what it seems like. That's the only way I guess I can kind of get my mind around this. Either way, what a sighting. We've got time for one last report here. This is Nuforc case 187112, the cemetery landing in New Orleans. Some UFO sightings begin with mysterious lights in the sky. This one began with strange figures moving among the tombs of one of New Orleans' oldest cemeteries. Remember, they put those tombs above ground down there because of the constant flooding, so it's a little different than a normal cemetery. According to a report submitted to the National UFO Reporting Center, the incident occurred on the evening of June 11th, 1961 at approximately 8 p.m. near Greenwood Cemetery in New Orleans. Although the report was not submitted until 2025, the witness stated that she had recounted the same story consistently for decades to family and friends. She was not alone that night. Her fiancé, Joe, witnessed the entire event. The couple had spent the day together and stopped at L'Enfance restaurant, whose rear parking lot bordered Greenwood Cemetery. The area was a popular gathering place for young couples seeking privacy, and as the witness recalled, nearly everyone else in the parking lot was focused on one another, not on what was happening beyond the chain-link fence. While talking, the witness noticed movement between the cemetery's above-ground tombs. To those unfamiliar with New Orleans, many family tombs standing 5 to 6 feet tall, creating rows of large concrete structures, are separated by narrow walkways. Moving through those walkways were what appeared to be several small figures. The witness estimated they stood only 3.5 to 4 feet tall, roughly the height of young children. But something didn't make sense. The cemetery was locked at night. There were no nearby neighborhoods where children might have wandered in. The cemetery itself was surrounded by roads, railroad tracks, businesses, and open land. Yet these figures appeared to be moving with purpose. The witness described them as walking back and forth as though they were working on something hidden among the tombs. Occasionally, tiny lights appeared with the movement. Her fiancé noticed the same activity and quietly asked if she was seeing what he was seeing. The two compared observations and agreed on every detail. For more than 10 minutes, they simply watched. Eventually, the activity shifted further to the right and disappeared behind the tombs, where the figures could no longer be seen. The couple assumed whatever they had witnessed was over and resumed talking. A few minutes later, something far stranger happened. From the same direction where the figures had disappeared, a large circle of lights suddenly illuminated. The witness struggled to describe them. She wrote that they were unlike any lights she had ever seen. Although they appeared brilliantly illuminated, they did not cast light onto their surroundings. Instead, she described them as somehow pure, the opposite of pitch black. The lights outlined a large circular object resting on the ground. Then, without making a sound, it began to rise. The couple estimated they were only 60 to 80 feet away. The object ascended perfectly vertically and extremely slowly. Its motion was smooth. There was no engine noise, no exhaust, no visible means of propulsion. As it climbed higher, the witness could clearly see its shape. It was a round craft with a dome top and a flat underside, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Then something changed. The strange white perimeter lights suddenly disappeared. In their place, 3 lights became visible beneath the craft, arranged in a triangle. One was red, one was green, one was white. Moments later, the object accelerated toward the west. According to the witness, the departure was instantaneous. The craft continued climbing while simultaneously disappearing into the distance at an incredible speed. The two witnesses sat in stunned silence. Rather than discussing what they had just seen together, they decided on an unusual test. They drove to the home of the witness's best friend, Ida. Each would describe the event separately to see whether their stories matched. According to the report, they did. Every major detail was identical. The following day after school, the couple returned to Greenwood Cemetery with several close friends. They wanted to determine exactly where they had observed the strange figures and where the object had lifted off. They found the section where the figures had been moving among a group of newly constructed tombs that had not yet been sealed. Comparing the tombs with what they had seen the previous night confirmed their original estimate that the figures were only 3.5 to 4 feet tall. They then walked to the grassy area where the craft had appeared. There, they reportedly discovered a large, perfectly circular area of flattened grass. The grass was not burned. There were no scorch marks, no broken branches, only a smooth, circular impression where, according to the witness, the object had rested. Afraid of ridicule, they told almost no one. But according to the witness, the story did not end there. Roughly a month later, while studying late one night, she fell asleep with the light still on. She awoke suddenly at exactly 3 a.m. She said she heard what seemed to be an adult male voice, not spoken loud, but inside her mind. The voice instructed her to go to the window. Her bedroom overlooked a large lake through an entire wall of glass. She looked outside but saw nothing. Then the voice told her that they were coming to take her home. She mentally replied that she would only go if Joe and Ida were coming too. According to the report, the voice answered that they were. Without consciously thinking about it, she went to her closet, removed a suitcase, and began packing clothes. She then wrote a goodbye letter to her parents, explaining that she was going home, and even distributed her personal belongings among family members. She still reportedly possessed that letter decades later. After waiting for what felt like a long time, the voice returned. This time it told her that plans had changed. They would not be coming that night, but would return another time. She went back to school. The next day, she telephoned Ida. Before mentioning her own experience, she asked whether anything unusual had happened during the night. According to the report, Ida immediately replied that she had awakened to the same male voice, telling her that he was coming to get her along with Joe and the witness. Thinking it was only a dream, Ida went back to sleep. Joe reportedly described the same experience. Neither of them, however, recalled hearing the second message canceling the visit. Years later, after the witness and Joe married and started a family, she heard a local radio station discussing UFO sightings. The host invited listeners to call with their own experiences. After hearing her account, the radio host reportedly advised her to stay tuned. As additional callers shared their stories, several described seeing the same object leaving Greenwood Cemetery from completely different vantage points around New Orleans, including motorists traveling on the nearby interstate. The witness believed that this was the first independent confirmation that others had seen the same event. The report concludes with background information about the original witness. She became a registered nurse, later worked in intensive care, managed a hospital quality department, served as a medical legal analyst, and eventually retired. She described herself as intelligent, open-minded, and cautious about extraordinary claims. The person who submitted the report to Nuforc explained that the witness had originally documented the incident in 2005 on Nuforc before passing away in 2018. The submitter, who identified the witness as a relative by marriage, stated that they had heard the story firsthand many times over the years and believed that it deserved preservation because of its consistency. The presence of a second eyewitness and reports that others in the New Orleans area observed the same object that evening. As with many historic UFO cases, there is no surviving physical evidence that can independently verify every aspect of the account. The reported landing trace was never formally investigated. The alleged telepathic experiences cannot be corroborated, and the radio broadcast mentioning additional witnesses has not been independently documented. Nevertheless, the case remains one of the more detailed historical reports in the Nuforc archive, combining an alleged landed craft, multiple eyewitnesses, possible physical trace evidence, and later claims of high strangeness experiences into a single extraordinary narrative that continues to spark discussion more than 6 decades after the events were said to have occurred. That is weird. A lot of people would get sidetracked seeing this event happen over a cemetery and just assume that these things were some kind of people returning from the dead or maybe ghosts or some kind of demonic activity. But seeing the ship kind of puts it all together, and it's weird. Myself, I wouldn't be comfortable with having these things come back to me a couple days later and say, hey, you're going home with us. This church lady would say, not today, Satan. I guess would be my response to that. But what a very cool report. It sounds like the lady that sent this in had a very successful life and she's passed on now. But I think it's great that Nuforc saves these things. It's just like a giant history book there online for all of us to see. Hey, if you like the program, don't forget to hit like, follow, subscribe. Doesn't cost a dime. It's always thanks to the folks that support the program financially. It really helps. Until next time, this is UFO Warning. Over and out.